shop. I travelled every roof in the country, and there isn't one where you get as handsome a prospect." Theoretically he was right, but I had not come up to the roof to discuss scenery, and demanded brutally why he had sent for me. The explanation involved a recital of the special genius required to sweep the Shrillane chimneys, of the fact that the sweep had in infancy been sent up and down every one of them by great uncle Mccarthy, of the 3 assloads of soot that by his peculiar skill he had this morning taken from the kitchen chimney, of its present purity, the draught being such that it would draw up a young cat with it. Finally, realising that I can endure no more, he explained that my bedroom chimney had got what he called a wind in it, and he proposed to climb a little way down in the stack to try would he get to come at the brush. The sweep was very small, the chimney very large. I stipulated that he should have a rope round his waist, and despite the illegality I let him go. He went down like a monkey, digging his toes and fingers into the niches made for the purpose in the old chimney. Peter held the rope. I lit a cigarette and waited. Certainly the view from the roof was worth coming up to look at. It was rough, heathery country on one side, with a string of little blue lakes running like a turquoise necklet round the base of a firry hill, and patches of pale green pasture were set amidst the rocks and heather. A silvery flash behind the undulations of the hills told where the Atlantic lay in immense plains of sunlight. I turned to survey with an owner's eye my own grey woods and straggling plantations of larch, and espied a man coming out of the western wood. He had something on his back, and he was walking very fast. A rabbit poacher, no doubt. As he passed out of sight into the back avenue, he was beginning to run. At the same instant I saw on the hill beyond my western boundaries half a dozen horsemen scrambling by zigzag ways down towards the wood. There was one red coat among them. It came first at the gap in the fence that Tim Connor had gone out to mend, and with the others was lost to sight in the covert, from which in another instant came clearly through the frosty air a shout of "Gone to ground!" Tremendous horn blowings followed. Then, all in the same moment, I saw the hounds break in full cry from the wood, and come stringing over the grass and up the back avenue towards the yard gate. Were they running a fresh fox into the stables? I do not profess to be a hunting man, but I am an Irishman, and so, it is perhaps superfluous to state, is Peter. We forgot the sweep as if he had never existed, and precipitated ourselves down the ladder, down the stairs, and out into the yard. One side of the yard is formed by the coach house and a long stable, with a range of lofts above them, planned on the heroic scale in such matters that obtained in Ireland formerly. These join the house at the corner by the back door. A long flight of stone steps leads to the lofts, and up these, as Peter and I emerged from the back door, the hounds were struggling helter-skelter. Almost simultaneously there was a confused clatter of hoofs in the back avenue, and Flurry Knox came stooping at a gallop under the archway, followed by 3 or 4 other riders. They flung themselves from their horses and made for the steps of the loft. More hounds pressed, yelling, on their heels. The din was indescribable, and justified Mrs. Cadogan's subsequent remark that when she heard the noise she thought 'twas the end of the world and the devil collecting his own. I jostled in the wake of the party, and found myself in the loft, wading in hay, and nearly deafened by the clamour that was bandied about the high roof and walls. At the farther end of the loft the hounds were raging in the hay, encouraged thereto by the whoops and screeches of Flurry and his friends. High up in the gable of the loft, where it joined the main wall of the house, there was a small door, and I noted with a transient surprise that there was a long ladder leading up to it. Even as it caught my eyes, a hound fought his way out of a drift of hay and began to jump at the ladder, throwing his tongue vociferously and even clambering up a few rungs in his excitement. "That's the way he's gone!" roared Flurry, striving through hounds and hay towards the ladder. "Trumpeter has him! What's up there back of the door, Major? I don't remember it at all." My crimes had evidently been forgotten in the supremacy of the moment. While I was futilely asserting that had the fox gone up the ladder he could not possibly have opened the door and shut it after him, even if the door led anywhere, which to the best of my belief it did not, the door in question opened, and to my amazement the sweep appeared at it. He gesticulated violently, and over the tumult was heard to asseverate that there was nothing above there, only a way into the flue, and any one would be destroyed with the soot. "Ah, go to blazes with your soot!" interrupted Flurry, already halfway up the ladder. I followed him, the other men pressing up behind me. That Trumpeter had made no mistake was instantly brought home to our noses by the reek of fox that met us at the door. Instead of a chimney, we found ourselves in a dilapidated bedroom full of people. Tom Connor was there, the sweep was there, and a squalid elderly man and woman on whom I had never set eyes before. There was a large open fireplace, black with the soot the sweep had brought down with him, and on the table stood a bottle of my own special Scotch whisky. In one corner of the room was a pile of broken packing cases, and beside these on the floor lay a bag in which something kicked. Flurry, looking more uncomfortable and nonplussed than I could have believed possible, listened in silence to the ceaseless harangue of the elderly woman. The hounds were yelling like lost spirits in the loft below, but her voice pierced the uproar like a bagpipe. It was an unspeakably vulgar voice, yet it was not the voice of a countrywoman, and there were frowsy remnants of respectability about her general aspect. "And is it you, Flurry Knox, that's calling me a disgrace? Disgrace indeed, am I? Me that was your poor mother's own uncle's daughter, and as good a Mccarthy as ever stood in Trelane?" What followed I could not comprehend, owing to the fact that the sweep kept up a perpetual undercurrent of explanation to me as how he had got down the wrong chimney. I noticed that his breath stank of whisky, Scotch, not the native variety. Never, as long as Flurry Knox lives to blow a horn, will he hear the last of the day that he ran his mother's first cousin to ground in the attic. Never, while Mrs. Cadogan can hold a basting spoon, will she cease to recount how, on the same occasion, she plucked and roasted 10 couple of woodcock in one torrid hour to provide luncheon for the hunt. In the glory of this achievement, her confederacy with the stowaways in the attic is wholly slurred over, in much the same manner as the startling outburst of summons for trespass, brought by Tim Connor during the remainder of the shooting season, obscured the unfortunate episode of the bagged fox. It was, of course, zeal for my shooting that induced him to assist Mr. Knox's disreputable relations in the deportation of my foxes, and I have allowed it to remain at that. In fact, the only things not allowed to remain were Mr. and Mrs. Mccarthy Gannon. They, as my landlord informed me in the midst of vast apologies, had been permitted to squat at Trelane until my tenancy began, and having then ostentatiously and abusively left the house, they had, with the connivance of the Cadugans, secretly returned to roost in the corner attic, to sell foxes under the aegis of my name, and to make inroads on my belongings. They retained connection with the outer world by means of the ladder and the loft, and with the house in general, and my whisky in particular, by a door into the other attics, a door concealed by the wardrobe in which reposed great uncle Mccarthy's tall hat. It is with the greatest regret that I relinquish the prospect of writing a monograph on great uncle Mccarthy for a spiritualistic journal, but with the departure of his relations he ceased to manifest himself, and neither the nailing up of packing cases nor the rumble of the cart that took them to the station disturbed my sleep for the future. I understand that the task of clearing out the Mccarthy Gannon's effects was of a nature that necessitated 2 glasses of whisky per man, and if the remnants of rabbit and jackdaw disinterred in the process were anything like the crow that was thrown out of the window at my feet, I do not grudge the restorative. As Mrs. Cadogan remarked to the sweep, "A Turk couldn't stand it." End of chapter 1.